All right. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're coming from. This is an international community, and we do want to recognize that. Welcome to Simply Cyber Firesides. I am your host, Dr. Gerald Auger, and I'm super pumped to have all of you join us for what I guarantee you is going to be a wicked fascinating conversation. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Ross Haleliuk. Now, Ross is a true force in the cybersecurity world. He's an experienced operator and builder who's actively shaping the future of our field. He's a co-founder and CEO of a stealth cybersecurity startup, which I know, he's going to crush. Russ is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, Cyber for Builders, a must-read for anyone interested in building the next generation of cybersecurity solutions. I also want to point out that book was actually a SANS 2024 Difference Maker Award winner. So Ross was at that same event and winning prizes that the Daily Cyber Threat Brief podcast was at. So he's getting recognized for his contributions and efforts. He's straight crushing it like a boss. Now, beyond that, as if that wasn't enough, he's a prolific blogger at Venture and Security, a podcast co-host for Inside the Network, an active angel investor in the security space. And as you can see, Ross wears many hats and he brings a wealth of knowledge and insights to the table. I'm telling you, I was talking to him for about 10 minutes in the green room before we went live. And I almost thirsty, selfishly, I'm like, what about this, Ross? What about this? And every answer he gave me just made me want to ask more interesting, deeper questions. I promise you guys, this is going to be a banger of an episode. We're going to be diving into a range of topics, okay? From his experience building cyber products and startups to the future of the industry and the challenges we might be facing. We'll also touch on his work as an author, a blogger, an investor. And this is your chance to get literally inside the mind of a true innovator in cybersecurity. We got him for 60 minutes, which is amazing for how busy he is as an individual. Now, most importantly, this is your show, Team SC. I encourage you to actively participate by asking questions in chat. We want this show, just like all of the firesides, to be an interactive discussion. So don't hesitate to share your thoughts and engage directly with Ross. If there's something there you want, I'll put it on stage and get out of the way. Again, he's here to help our community level up, not me. So I'm just facilitating the interaction for him to help all of us. Now, whether you're a seasoned cyber pro or a student just starting out, or you're just simply curious about the field or building something, we welcome your questions and comments. So now that we've laid all that out, let's get the fire started with Ross and let's bring him in to Simply Cyber Firesides. What's up, Ross? How are you, man?
Man, I'm fantastic. This has been the most generous introduction I've ever had on any podcast or any event. So thank you. The expectations are way too high, and I'm afraid I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to live up those expectations.
Oh, come on now. Every guest I have says something like that. Ross, everything I said was 100% true. I mean, I guess the question really would be, author, blogger, investor, business creator, business success, all these things, is there one that you particularly gravitate to or enjoy more than the others? Because you've got your fingers in so many pies. Is there one that is necessarily your soothe?
I don't know. You see, each of those areas, they're kind of complementary, but obviously I'm a builder, I'm an operator. I've been a product guy, I've been a product manager for quite some time, for a number of years. Before I ended up in cybersecurity, I worked in fintech, in e-commerce, retail, wholesale, and that is something that I enjoy. So building products, building teams, bringing people together, and trying to get something amazing out.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that. You recently wrote a book. I mentioned it in the intro, your Cyber for Builders. I'm going to bring this up right now just so everybody can see this book. This is no small feat what Ross has done here. There it is. Let me do this so we can properly see ourselves as well as what Ross is doing here. Your book, Cyber for Builders, it's specifically targeted at those building the future of cybersecurity, not just practicing it. And I'm curious, can you share with us, if you had to distill kind of the core entrepreneurial mindset needed to succeed in this space down to kind of a single thought or a single sentence, something concise that you could deliver, what would it be? What would you say?
Honestly, I would say there are no answers that you can really borrow from somewhere else. You have to at the end of the day, your chances of success are probably as high or as low as everybody else's. It doesn't really matter how much you know. It doesn't matter what kind of experiences you have. And I think I'm a fantastic example. I've been in product. I've been building things for quite some time, for well over a decade, and my chances of success with wherever it is that I am up to are basically as high or as low as anybody starting out today with no experience whatsoever. It's fascinating how entrepreneurship and building companies just uh, levels everybody. Doesn't matter what their background is.
So to that point, as far as like, building a cybersecurity startup or building any startup, I know you've got a lot of experience with this. I'm curious. So I run my own business now, but I never, I guess, thought that I would ever, do that. I feel like the people that I see, and maybe this is a mistake on my part, is that like, oh, they were 20 and they were like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to go hard and do it. And for me, it was like, oh, I just worked a 9 to 5, 40 hours, grew a career, became, top of wherever I wanted to get. And then I was like, oh, check this out. Were you always that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, or did you have some type of like event that pushed you into this direction?
I think it depends how you choose to define entrepreneurial mindset, right? For many people, and especially today, like in this day and age, the ability to start companies, the ability to build something has been largely de-risked. So 10, 20 years ago, well, especially 20 years ago, if you were to go out on your own and try to get something started, you had no support, you had no people around you that would probably encourage you. People, your friends and your family would look at you and say, oh my god, you're crazy. Why don't you just keep this fantastic job you have and then retire with a defined benefits plan, knowing exactly how much you're going to get in retirement. And fast forward to today, and you have all kinds of resources, right? You have accelerators, incubators, you have business school, you have all kinds of online courses, you have mentors, you have angel investor networks, you have so many different resources that it has become like the process of starting a company has been simplified and has been professionalized in a way. That's why you have serial entrepreneurs and people trying to take a stab at building a company one after another. In my specific case, I don't know if there has been a specific trigger. Instead, I would always try to go an extra mile and do something else on the side and pursue some other goals outside of wherever it was that was my main activity. And at a certain point, I just said, you know what? How about I just bring it all together and I try to focus on one thing and have everything else just be, hobbies or some other things I pursue.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you made, not only about having the support of people saying like go for it, but as you were talking, I'm thinking, even though subscription as a service is this new like business model that so many do, dude, for $100 a month, you can get email and office
Yeah.
documents and compute versus like, having to go to the bank, right? I feel like back in the day, you'd have to go to the bank with a business plan and request $100,000 for capital startup cost, right? And that's kind of been eliminated too. So I guess from your perspective, you're an angel investor as well. Are you seeing a growth, or let me rephrase that. What kind of growth are you seeing in the startup space? Is it growing exponentially because all of these barriers to entry are being eliminated or reduced?
I think it's easier than ever to start a company today, and it's harder than ever to build a company or to build wherever it is that you have started into a real company. Because yes, to your point, there was a time when you needed very high startup costs. You needed a lot of capital in order for you to even be able to just like rent a facility and hire people. Today, you can outsource so much. You can get you can get help for literally pennies somewhere on Upwork, or you can just use AI to do a lot of the work that you don't really have to focus on, and you don't have to hire people to do. So it has definitely become easier to start a company. That said, because of the number of startups and because it's so easy to start company, it means that more and more people are trying to take a stab and say, hey, maybe I'm going to get lucky, maybe I'm going to be able to pursue my vision, and so I should do it. And you see it in security as well. Equally, You equally see it outside of security. I would say even more so. And so I personally have a lot of disagreements when people start complaining, saying, "Hey, there is over 5,000 vendors in cybersecurity space." And I look at it and I say, yes, there is. And I remember when I worked in the financial technology space, there was over 50,000 vendors. So if cybersecurity is indeed everybody's problem, then maybe having 5,000 vendors is not that bad. Then you look at MarTech, marketing technology. It's over like 50, 60, 70,000 vendors. You look at HR tools. It's roughly the same number. So cybersecurity is competitive. There is more and more people trying to start something. I think it is only going to increase. A year from now, there will only going to be more startups, and the space is going to only become more competitive. But at the end of the day, this is still the best time to build a company.
Yeah, no, I love that. So as an investor, again, like chat, this is what I'm telling you. Like Ross is talking, and I'm like, oh my god, like I want to just like dive into that question. So okay, so it's easier to get startups, and people are starting up, and the space might appear to be saturated, but it's not, especially if you compare to other verticals. Let me ask you, you're as an investor, right? With this growth and saturation of startups, like how are you able to discern or like separate the wheat from the chaff? Basically, how are you able to like look at this pile of startups and be like, oh yeah, like these ones are clearly good and these ones are clearly not going to make, like, like it's, I love the attitude and spunk kid, but it's just not going to work. Like what's your kind of approach to that?
Yeah, I think in my case, it's so much simpler than what you can imagine. So, as you know, there are different types of investors, right? There are angel investors, the people investing their own money. It can be small checks, somewhere around $5,000, going up to like very big checks, $1 million and more. There are venture capitalists whose role is to essentially raise capital from other investors called limited partners or LPs, and then pull that capital together and allocate relatively large checks or very large checks to a small number of companies. So I am just a humble angel investor. I support people I believe in, and most the people I support are my friends. Whenever somebody in my network is going to build something, if I am able to support them, be it financially or more importantly non-financially, I'm always going to do it. And in the same way, I know now that I am sort of going on the same path. A lot of the people that I worked with before, and a lot of the people that know me and know how I work and know what kind of problems I care about, are coming with an offer to do the same for me. So it's uh, I think the question you're asking is still a very legitimate question. It's probably much more geared towards a venture capitalist whose job
Yeah.
is to try and generate the best returns for their own investors. Now, the way I look at it is much simpler. I care about the team. I care about the fact that people have some idea what it is that they're trying to do, and that idea plus the team plus the market look reasonable. Now, if you're a VC, then your criteria are going to be very different, and they're largely going to be dependent on the stage you invest in. So if you are more of a later stage investor, then you will obviously be looking at the revenue, you will be looking at the growth trajectory of the company. You will be trying to understand whether or not they have hit the milestones that you would have expected them to hit. If, however, you are more of an early stage investor, so pre-seed, seed stage, at that point you care most about the very similar aspects that an angel investor would care about. You care about the team, you care about the market, you care about the problem they're trying to go after, probably in that order. So definitely the team being number one, because at the end of the day, uh, it, if a smart team, like a good team, a hungry team in a big enough market, is always going to be able to find the spot, and it's always going to be able to identify a niche they can pursue. But a good team in a small market will struggle. A bad team in a big market will very much struggle. So it comes down to people in all cases. If you're an early stage investor, you care about the pedigree, you care about the hunger, you care about their experiences, you care about what type of experiences have they accumulated, and whether or not those are the type of experiences that are the best fit for the company they're trying to build. So there are a ton of different criteria, but I would look at those three.
Awesome. We have questions coming in. Cam Godet, which GRC Mafia, I might have mentioned. I'm pretty sure I saw Cam put that. Cam wants to know, since we're talking about investing, and AI is like literally, you can't walk 15 feet. Like, I know RSA is coming up, and like, I'd be curious, like, if let me know, right? If you end up going to RSA, if it's over 100%. Vendors marketing AI. Like, I'm setting the floor at 100%. And if somehow it goes above that, let me know. Cam wants to know how you think AI is reshaping the cybersecurity investment landscape over the next 5 years.
Yeah, it is a fantastic question. And the way I look at the industry, I'm a big believer that you have to stick to fundamentals. Like, trends are temporary, fundamentals are basically that. They're fundamentals. And so when I talk to security buyers, when I talk to security practitioners, cybersecurity leaders, yes, there is a lot of excitement about AI and the kind of opportunities that AI is going to be able to bring. But at the very fundamental level, people care about the very same things that they cared about 5 years ago. They still care about endpoint security. They care about network security. They care about identity. They care about email security. They care about reducing noise. They care about reducing the number of alerts that the security teams have to get, triage, navigate, and remediate, and so on and so forth. So there are going to be some ways in which AI is going to solve some of those challenges. There are, however, going to be cases when AI is just a layer on top. And if we want to truly address the problem, we have to go down to the fundamentals. We have to rebuild the infrastructure that created those problems to begin with. And so that is as far as actually trying to find a way to solve problems. Now, when you look at investors, of course, I don't think in 2025 you can find an investor that is interested, or at least actively looking to invest in companies that do not have AI in their description or AI in their mission statement. So is that going to be a problem over the long term? Probably. Not because AI is not a solution, but because AI is not the only solution that is needed. And so how is AI reshaping the security investment landscape? AI has occupied the security investment landscape. So if you are not building AI, you're probably not getting funded. Every startup, no matter which idea they're trying to pursue, needs to have an AI story, and it needs to be something that's compelling. It needs to be, a year ago, it was something to do with chatbots. Today, it's now agentic, and how you can use agents in order for you to build autonomous systems. So there's obviously a lot can be said, but at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that buyers do not care. Buyers could not care less about AI. A buyer has a problem they need to have solved, and if they're willing to pay for solving that problem, and if the solution works, and if the solution delivers on its promises, it doesn't matter if there is AI. Now, obviously, there is still this herd mentality, and even buyers are much more excited today to look at products that have AI plastered over their websites. So I would say it's changing marketing a lot. It is changing the way products are built to some extent. Like, we're still early on that side. It is changing investment landscape a ton as well. And whether or not it is going to truly redefine the industry and the way we are solving problems, the history is going to be the judge.
Nick Barker has a question regarding your blog, Ross. So he's found your blog. He says you had a blog post around cyber insurance having potential to mature the industry. So could you talk about with us, right, the classification system that could impact insurance? I guess I'm not familiar with this blog post. Obviously, you wrote it, but can you speak to it?
Sure. Yeah. So I am. Let me start by saying that I'm a big believer that people generally underestimate the potential that cyber insurance and insurance more broadly has and is going to have on the cybersecurity market. I think that probably the number one person who has been talking a lot about the future of cyber insurance is not even me. It's Jeremiah Grossman.
Oh yeah.
Jeremiah talks a lot about how insurance is defining the present day. He talks a lot about how insurance is going to shape where cybersecurity is going in the future. But fundamentally, if you look at other areas of our society, if you look at things like healthcare, for example, uh, it's really hard not to see the degree to which the state of healthcare, both in the United States but also in other countries, has been defined by insurance companies. So in countries where you have a single payer system, you're going to have health institutions working very differently than in countries where you have like private health insurance. And then within that, depending on what are the types of I guess needs covered by insurance, you will see demand for some of those aspects go up and down. So in cybersecurity, we're still early, but when you think about it from the philosophical standpoint, more and more vendors are starting to ask that more and more enterprises are starting to ask that their vendors provide some evidence of cyber insurance. If you're a cyber insurance underwriter, you know that if in case of a loss, according to the policy, you stand to pay out a lot of money. Now, it is in your best interest to make sure that you reduce the chances that you will have to pay out like the money. And the challenge with cybersecurity historically has been that there is very little of that alignment of interest between different parties in the market, right? The government obviously wants to ensure that companies, especially public enterprises, will invest more into their security posture. But if they don't, the government, with some exceptions, isn't going to be doing incident response to those companies. Now, so there is a good alignment of interest there, but still, it's not as strong as when an insurance company knows that if their customer was to get breached, they're going to be paying out a lot of money. So insurance companies are starting to raise the bar for who can qualify for insurance. Insurance companies are starting to improve the way they underwrite policies, the way they decide how much money the customer is going to be paying for the insurance policy. So I do believe that in the coming future, what we will see is insurance companies maturing and actually starting to understand what types of controls correlate with losses more than others. And that means that is going to lead to them demanding that companies provide the proof that they have those controls in place so that they can reduce their loss exposure.
Yeah, and we'll steer this conversation back towards Ross's book and stuff like that. But I'm glad you shouted out Jeremiah Grossman. He's been talking about cyber insurance and the importance of it since like 2015. Like I remember being at a Black Hat talk, and he was like, "Insurance companies are going to dictate what controls you have in place in the next 5 years." And I was like, "Whoa! Like this is so cool." Are you like, you know how he hosts that breakfast for the cyber insurance stuff at Black Hat? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I have not attended one. No.
Okay, yeah, I've attended it. I've missed it some years, but like it's like super niche, the cyber insurance space. So let's pivot back, guys. We were talking about Ross's book here, Cyber for Builders, award-winning, also Amazon, bestseller kind of thing, 99 ratings, 4.8 stars, 4.5 on Goodreads. It's legit. Okay. And I'll drop a link to this in chat in just a moment. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Ross, is in our industry, okay, there's a lot of wicked smart people that are super, super technical. And your book actually emphasizes the importance of understanding the business side of cybersecurity. So what kind of advice or what are your thoughts around these people who are uber technical that probably could start up a business on their own, especially considering the barriers to entry are so low, but they struggle to understand the business or even speak to business people in some capacities, right? You're like in the SOC or you're in the differ lab and you just never get out of there, but you're the best in the industry, but you can't do that. What are your thoughts around that transition?
I don't know if I have a good perspective. Like I can obviously share some of my some what I would do
Yeah,
if I were
yeah,
in that position.
bring
But
it.
I would probably ask myself, what are the types of skills that I lack? What are the types of skills I need to develop? And based on that, see how do I develop them? For me, the step number one, if you're thinking about building a company, and it doesn't even matter in which role you see yourself, you have to get out. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to people. You have to understand like what drives their decisions. You have to understand what do they actually care about. And it is fascinating the degree to which, if you ask that question in the cybersecurity space, you realize that most security leaders and most definitely most businesses do not actually care as much about the technical aspects of cybersecurity, right? They look at it like a business cares about profits. Business cares about revenue generation. It cares about growth. It cares about expansion. It cares about expansion into new markets, expansion into new geographies, and so on and so on and so forth. So security is there as a support function. It is a very similar support function that, for example, HR, human resources are. And when you think about it from that perspective, how often do you hear a business recognizing HR as the core component of the company strategy? Sadly, not that often. But is it? It 100% is. It unless there is a strong HR function, unless the company is able to recruit like the top talent, it won't be able to compete. It will suffer from from all kinds of different challenges, both culturally and economically. But there is not that recognition. I don't think security is any different. When you talk to security practitioners, it's very easy to get bogged down into the nitty gritties of the like the day to day, and it is critical. It is super important, but it is also important to remember that business is there to generate profits, and security, when a security practitioner works for the business, their role is to safeguard those profits. And looking at it from that perspective makes it much easier to go out and say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to safeguard? Like, what is this company actually doing? What are the different types of departments? What are the different types of teams? What are they doing? How are they doing their jobs? How are they contributing towards the future of this business? And it starts by asking questions. It starts by being curious, and it starts by being willing to have that conversation.
So I appreciate that, and I'm kind of you know, I definitely agree about just the ability to understand and identify those weaknesses. I feel like a lot of people, especially more early in their career, I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where like you almost feel like you got all the answers because you know some stuff and you don't want to admit weaknesses or areas of growth opportunity for your own personal development. But I love that you're sharing that and pointing that out so people can take it. We did have a specific question. So I have linked to Ross's book here, Cyber for Builders, in the YouTube chat. So it's pinned right now if you want to go check it out and read a bit more about it. There was a very specific question that I loved. Now, one thing you may not know, Ross, is that the Simply Cyber community is very diverse and international. In fact, every Wednesday morning on the morning podcast, we actually stop and like ask everyone where they are, and like we light a map up for 2 minutes playing Daft Punk around the world, and we usually get the entire all the main continents covered. Although Australia's been lacking lately, but it's like 2 a.m. there, so we can't be too mad. Joel wants to know what's the relevance of Cyber for Builders. So like he is probably in Germany, but European markets and stuff. Does the lessons in here, does the education you provide for transformation for the reader, does it apply in international communities and business spaces?
It does, although not completely. So European market is definitely very different. It has different types of players. It moves at a different pace than the US market. That said, it's still like at the very fundamental level, there's still very similar parties involved, right? We're still talking about angel investors. We're still talking about VCs. We're still talking about channel partners like managed security service providers. We're still talking about security leaders largely looking at the same trends. So a lot of it is applicable. That said, the way the products are bought in many European countries is going to differ. The way the buyers behave, the way the buyers evaluate the tools, how they find those tools and where they look for the tools, and what are the type of communities that they interact with on the day-to-day, that's going to differ to a large extent. So I will say it depends what is the problem you're trying to solve. If you're looking for a perspective that could if you're looking for a book where a part of the perspective is going to be applicable, then yes, it is relevant. If you're looking for like something that is 100% relevant to the market, be it Germany or any other European or just Latin American country, probably not.
So that's fascinating to me. And if chat will grant me some grace, I kind of want to like double click into this, which is this buzzword that I've heard recently that somehow I've adopted. You said European markets are way different. Now, I'm a bit uncultured, Ross. I'll be the first to admit it. Like I've never worked or operated in the European space. Can you provide some, I guess, examples? Like I'd love to understand, because I know the US market pretty well. But I would love to appreciate, compare and contrast. What are some things that are like just way different in the European market?
I will give you one to start that is going to really illustrate just how different this is. When you're talking about the US market, there is one market. Whether you're talking to people in Iowa, you're talking to people in Austin, you're talking to people in Kentucky, you're talking to people in DC, it's still like the culture is going to be to a large degree the same. Right? People may have different political views, different socioeconomic views. Like there's a lot that is going to be different, but the language is the same. The way people buy is the same, and to a large degree, you're talking to the same people who grew up watching the same TV, maybe different channels, but still the same TV, same language. When you're talking about a European market, the number one thing that we have to make very clear is that there is no European market. There is 20 plus separate markets. If you're trying to sell to a company in Germany, the way they look at the world, the type of capabilities they look for, the way they buy is going to be very different than if you're talking to somebody in Italy, or if you're talking to somebody in France, or if you're talking to somebody in Switzerland or in Croatia. They're entirely different universes with different languages. So you have to localize your product to their needs. You need to understand how people in that specific region buy things. Whom do they buy from? If you are talking about a German company, they're going to buy, like if you're a German enterprise, is going to either buy from an American company or like a large established enterprise, or they're going to buy from a German startup. A German enterprise, it's not going to go to a French startup. A French enterprise is not going to buy from a German startup. They're going to buy from a French startup. You don't see the same kind of division and the same kind of mentality in the US. It doesn't really matter which state you're from. You're still going to be able to sell to companies like in another state, and they will not look at you any differently as they would if you were a bunch of founders from their state. So it's just, and that's just the layer one. Then you look at the way investors function. In the US, investors care about the upside, right? They think about how big can this idea be, and what do I need to do to support this company. So the risk, like the amount of risk that an American investor is willing to take is super high if they can see or they can envision a potential upside that is going to justify that risk. If you look at European companies, if you look at European investors, they tend to be much more risk averse. When they underwrite startups, they look at it from a perspective that, of course, yes, how big can it get, but also how much money can I lose and how much confidence do I need to have in order for me to invest. If you're talking to a VC in a European company, in a European country, they may ask you for 5 years, 5-year financial projections. If you're talking to a VC in San Francisco, they don't even care about 2-year long financial projections, because they know that that's a fantasy, and no startup can predict what's going to happen 5 years from now. So you just have to be willing to take risk. If you think about what it takes to start a company, in California, or basically in any other state in the United States, you just file the incorporation papers online, you get the paperwork back, and you're done. If you're trying to start a company in say France, the number of hoops that you have to jump through, the number of times you have to go to see a notary, the number of times you have to pay, like the amount of money you have to pay to incorporate, like, and the complexity associated with that is just very different. So the ecosystem for building companies is very well present in the United States. It's better than anywhere else on the planet, but it is not at the same level in most European countries.
There you go. So you heard it here, people. If you're here in the United States watching, and you've even sniffing starting a business, Ross is telling you, like, we've got the lowest hurdle to jump over. So go explore that. So Ross, you have done a million things, right? Obviously, and been wildly successful at a million things. I'm curious, like, it's a little bit of a personal question, but what motivates you?
I am, I like to say that I'm driven by two things. I'm driven by the sense of purpose and sense of achievement. And those are the two primary drivers. So I see there is absolutely nothing about my past. Uh, if you look 10, 15, 10, let's just say 15 years ago, that would have logically led me to where I am today. I studied history and political science. I majored in history of Russia. I did a thesis on the history of Freemasonry in Russia at the beginning of the 20th century. So as you can imagine, nothing to do with either technology or cybersecurity. I learned English 11 years ago when I immigrated to Canada. I did not speak a single word of English before that. So for me, the fact that I'm able to speak and write, and the fact that I even have that confidence to go on a podcast and talk to such an amazing audience like yours, it's a step that did not just happen. It was a lot of work and a lot of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And so I find that when it's almost like when you have no choice, you either just collapse under the weight of your circumstances, or you find the strength and you find the motivation to go. And if you choose the latter, then you start going. You gain that momentum, and at a certain point you can no longer stop. So for me, when I immigrated to Canada 11 years ago, and I had to rebuild my life, I had to learn the language, I had to understand what type of career am I going to build in this society. And so like, I had to understand what kind of life do I envision for myself, what kind of future do I envision to myself. And then I immigrated the second time. I moved to the United States. And so this whole journey has been just a non-stop pursuit of something bigger, something where I would be able to realize my potential. And that is one thing that I will say, is that different people have different fears. Some people are afraid of heights. Well, some people are afraid of something else. My biggest fear is to not be able to realize my potential, because I know I'm capable of a lot. And it's that drive to do more and more and more and more, and do so progressively, that has been driving a lot of my
Huh.
actions.
I love that. I love that. And, obviously it's almost like manifesting your success, right? I mean, you earned it. You put in the effort and the work and everything, but, like, I feel like people can talk about writing a book or talk about starting a podcast, but it's like leaning into it and facing, like, hey, this might not work out, but I'm going to give it a shot. Kind of like what we were talking about with startups, right? You try it, and you give it your best. And someone in chat, I think it was Cheddar, said, because you mentioned 1,000 tech startups make it, you're like, well, then all I need to do, and this is like the same mentality that you're talking about. Hold on, I clicked on the wrong one. Um, Cheddar said, I just need to start 1,000 companies, right? And then you're guaranteed, statistically speaking, to hit a home run. So as far as like those success and stuff, I mean, was writing this book, Cyber Builder for Builders, was this like one of those? Did you do this for, like, to push yourself, to challenge? Because writing a book is an effort. It's a big effort.
Yeah, so not really. I will say
It
in
was
my
for me.
case, I mean, so it is definitely okay. Writing a book is definitely a lot of effort, but in this case, it wasn't to push myself. So in my case, I have a fairly active blog called Venture in Security, where I talk about the business side of cybersecurity. I talk about different trends that I see in the industry. And in general, I try to summarize and share some of the perspectives that once in a while I feel like somebody else may find useful. Whether or not people do, that's, the good news is that the blog does not have a rating system. There is no, stars that people have there is no voting at the end of every blog post. So who knows? Like I hope people do find it useful, because the number of people reading it has been growing continuously. But what matters here is that I started the blog several years ago, and the reason I did it was because when I became active in the cybersecurity space, very quickly I came to realize that although there is a lot of very amazing and deeply technical talent, and as a result, a lot of amazing and deeply technical content about the technical side of security, there is very little about the business side of security. And so the podcast like the one that you are doing, like the podcast that I have, and like there's several other podcasts and maybe like 3 to 5 blogs, including Venture and Security, and that's really it. There's like hundreds of fantastic technical blogs. There's very few for people who may be tinkering with something on the side and considering starting a company. And so I started my blog because I saw that there is a gap, and I saw that I have something to offer to help and close that gap. And over time, over the years, I ended up uh, writing, I don't know, 100, 200 blog posts. I don't know. I don't count how many of them there are. And there was one day when I woke up and I realized that I already have like 30% of the book written. I just need
Mm.
to sit down and do the rest, like the outstanding 70%, and then just get it done. That's how I started writing. So when I started writing, I did not sit in front of a blank page. I looked at the wealth of blog posts and knowledge that I've accumulated and shared over several years, and said, you know what, I can take some of it. I will obviously have to rewrite it. I will have to extend it, but I have a starting point, and that starting point can become a beginning for something amazing or something valuable to others.
Well, let's dig into the book for a second. So, there's a bunch of different people in chat right now. There's a bunch of different people who watch this on replay, who are in different phases of their life, maybe different parts of the country, what or international. Like, who's this book for, or what kind of, for lack of a better term, avatars can get value from this text, and how could that value be, manifested?
Yeah. So the book is for builders, and I define builders in the broadest sense of this word. So if you are a startup founder in the cybersecurity space, if you're a security practitioner who is tinkering and building some open source projects and thinking, oh, could I evolve this into something else? Like maybe could I start a company around it? Uh, if you are a VC, if you're an angel investor, if you are a marketer at a security startup, if you're any kind of employee at a security startup, if you're any kind of employee at a large tech or cybersecurity company that is considering building something eventually, like it can be useful. The kind of topics that I discuss are really related to how does the industry look like. Like if you were to take 10 steps back, what are the types of different players in the industry? How do they all interact? How do industry analysts add value to the ecosystem? How do channel partners add value to the ecosystem? What are the trends surrounding each of those? How do investors add value to the ecosystem? In what do people thinking about building security companies need to know about investors and how to approach investors? So there is a part of the book that covers sort of the fundamentals of different parties and different types of players. There is a part of the book that covers different trends and different sort of changes that I believe are happening in the industry. Now, some of them I have a higher confidence in than others, but I thought that sharing that perspective could be useful. And then the last part of the book is about just some very basic or very core aspects of running a company, right? What are some of the steps around ideation and zooming in on an idea to pursue? What are some of the areas to think about when it comes to hiring, when it comes to building the product, taking it to market? So you can kind of get a general idea of what are the types of people that could benefit from it.
Well, let's help people, I guess start on second base instead of having to get a double or a single. For people, I know you're inspiring people who have been on the fence about building something. What are some, I guess, common pitfalls or things that everybody who doesn't know does that mistake? Are there any kind of like easy lessons learned or things that people can just kind of get a head start, like I said, start on second base that you could share?
Honestly, I feel like if building a company or building a startup could be templatized or could be put into a formula, it would have been much easier. I think everybody ends up making their own mistakes, and I most certainly am not an exception. I know some things, and I try to avoid some mistakes that people before me have made, but I am going to make my own fair share of mistakes as well. And so I think if you're talking about just the very fundamental aspects of starting something new, I think the number one question is, who is it for? And what problem do people have? And I know it sounds basic, but it is important to think about it deeper than just, oh, I worked at two companies and I ran into this problem and I'm going to build a solution around it, and that solution is going to be a company. Because maybe the problems that you have faced yourself are indeed legitimate problems, and every single security team is going to face them, and maybe people care about those problems so much that they're actually willing to pay for solving uh, those problems. Now, in reality, however, you're more likely going to run into a situation where maybe there is only it's only some types of companies that are running into this problem. Maybe it's only companies in manufacturing that have this problem, or maybe it's only when you are working at the SaaS security team and you're a security engineer, and those are the types of companies that are running into this problem. Now, having that answer alone doesn't help you to decide whether or not you should be building it into a company, but it makes it much easier to evaluate the size of the opportunity. Because what I see quite often is people look at the industry and they say, oh, I'm going to build this thing because everybody needs it. But what they don't realize is that their definition of everybody is all of their friends that work in very similar types of companies, of which there's only 250 on the planet. And so that makes it relatively hard to then sell this product, because if you look at your potential customers, you've got 250 potential customers. Not thousands, but 250. Then the other aspect, and I think that it is something that I'm struggling with as well, like a lot, is the realization that most security problems are not urgent. They're just not. Now, from the security practitioner standpoint, of course, they should be solved. But from the business standpoint, will the company be able to run if the problem X is not solved? Probably, yeah. Will the company notice that the security team doesn't have a tool that solves problem X? Probably not. And so it's this realization that you have to be able to clearly demonstrate return on investment. And that return on investment cannot just be, oh, this is going to be making us more secure, because not everybody cares about being more secure. People need a stronger argument in order for them to buy. It's not that security leaders are bad too. They have a limited amount of budget, so they have to be able to say, hey, how do I allocate that budget? What do I prioritize? And that is very hard to do unless you have a very clear ROI, like return on investment calculation, that you can present to those people. So there are those basics that apply to virtually any business in any industry, but it is so much more critical to get it right in cybersecurity, because in security, the main driver is still compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And for one reason or another, most of the problems in the cybersecurity space have actually been solved at a good enough level for most companies. Now, it doesn't mean that all the problems have been solved, but what it means is that the company you're going to come into is probably already has something for email security. They already have something for endpoint security. They already have something for network security. They already have something for cloud security and identity and so on and so forth. And it's probably good enough. So how much better does your product have to be in order for you to convince them to switch? It's not an easy one. And then, so if you choose to pursue the types of problems that already have solutions and already have established markets, on the bright side, you get an established budget that you can tap into. But on the negative side, there are also established incumbents and established competitors. Alternatively, you can think about building something that hasn't yet been solved or hasn't yet been tackled at all, and is so new and emerging. Like, look at AI, maybe security for AI, security for, I don't know, security for Kubernetes, security for something else. But then how many people, then you then need to educate the market that that's actually a problem, because today, although all the investors are excited about AI, not every enterprise is currently adopting AI. So what is the pool of customers that are actually going to buy security, given that security tends to lag adoption in general, right? People bought the cloud first, and then like 3-4 years they started to say, okay, I guess we need to secure it. So is it going to be any different now? Maybe, maybe not. So I would say that the most important learnings and the most important things to consider have nothing to do with cybersecurity whatsoever.
That is interesting, and it is really a great point that Ross brings up around, like, you might solve something and be like, "Oh my god, this is great. This is going to revolutionize everything. Everyone's going to love this solution for whatever it is you done." But without kind of doing a market analysis, which is I guess the academic way of doing it, you don't know if it's like a problem that's super niche that you just happen to fall into, and there isn't really a market for it, or if it's really going to be the next thing. It's like the newest pumpkin spice latte or something like that. I'm kind of curious, Ross, like, say there is somebody who's like, all right, I got a cool idea, or I got something. Like, is there how, I mean, do you walk around RSA? Do you walk around Black Hat? Is there a resource that you recommend subscribing to? Like, how do you kind of like at least vet if the idea that you have is worth exploring?
Talk to people. Talk to people, ask questions, talk to your friends. Better yet, talk to people who are not your friends, because they're going to be able to give you a much more realistic feedback. There is a fantastic book that I always recommend. I've read it myself probably 10 times, well, maybe less than 10 times, but not much less. It's called The Mom Test. Nobody is able, like, if you ask your mother if you should pursue something, the answer is always going to be yes. If you ask your mother if she likes wherever it is that you're building or wherever it is that you're doing, she's always going to say yes. Exactly. This is the number one. Honestly, if you have a limited budget and you only have $20 and you're wondering which book should I buy, don't buy Cyber for Builders. Get this one. This is the book to read. And it really, especially for people who do not have that experience interviewing customers and understanding what are the right questions to ask, this is where I would start. Because it really starts with the way you frame questions. When you're talking to people, if you pitch them your idea and you say, hey, what do you think about it? People are generally gonna say nice things, because they want to, they want to motivate you. They want to keep you happy. So you have to learn how to ask questions that get people to actually talk about their problems, irrespective of whatever solution it is that you're building. You have to understand how to spot patterns and see and try to understand, okay, is this a common problem or is it not? But at the end of the day, what I have personally found, and I'm sure what most people do, is that cybersecurity is such a hard place to do any kind of customer discovery, because every company is at a different level of security maturity, and you talk to some companies and you ask them, hey, what do you like, what is this problem a problem for you? People will be like, oh my god, what is this? Like, of course not. And then you talk to this other company and they're like, yes, this is something that we are struggling with. You would be fascinated to realize that most companies today are still trying to figure out how to implement MFA, like how to roll out MFA, how to roll out SSO, how to get their SaaS applications behind SSO. Like, how it's, we are talking about the basics. Like, some companies are still implementing password managers. Like, some companies are trying to understand, do we or do we not need to buy an email security tool? Like,
Oh
the
my God.
state of the industry is fascinating, and it's very easy to be like, for especially for people like myself, it's so easy to be, to be spending my time in this like startup bubble, and then think that, oh my god, everybody is just thinking about this next big thing. No, the other day I was talking to one security leader, and they said that they're evaluating a startup for the cloud security uh, problems. And I said, okay, that's exciting. What startup are you looking at? And they were like, oh, we are looking at this company called Viz. So from
Oh
my
my God.
perspective, I look at Wiz and I think that that is like the biggest cloud security company today. But some large enterprise, they look at Wiz and for them it's this startup, because when they think about large company, they think about Microsoft, they think about Cisco, they think about something that has been around for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades. They're not thinking about the company that has been around 5 years. So it's that perception that I find rather fascinating as well.
Yeah, and if you didn't know, this is Wiz right here. Um, they've got like, $500 million ARR, like, annual run revenue. They've got $1 billion valuation. It's the same company that Microsoft, or not, Google, I believe, offered $29 billion to acquire, and they're like, nah, we're good. Like, we'll wait until we're 100 billion. Like 29 billion would be getting like some type of like nickel on the dollar value. So yeah, when I think Wiz, I also do not think startup. Guy in the garage trying to like cobble some stuff together. Definitely love the mom book recommendation as well. I'm actually going to check this one out myself, and it makes me think of like this lesson that I heard once where, if you have like an idea, like, oh, I've got a great idea for a course, Ross. Here's what it is. What do you think? Oh, that sounds great, Jerry. And then you make it, and then Ross doesn't buy it, right? And it's like, would you buy it? Yes, 10 people, 9 will probably say yes. But then if you're like, oh, cool, because I have it in my car, like, let's go outside and I'll take it out of my trunk and give it to you for
Exactly.
$100. They're like, I'm busy.
Yeah, yeah, and what this book specifically does, it emphasizes how important it is to talk to people about their past and present behaviors, not about hypothetical scenarios. Because if you ask a person, hey, tell me about the problem you've experienced over the past 2 weeks, and let's talk about that, people don't generally lie. They have no incentives to lie. They're going to be able to share a real story with you, and it's going to be a real story, and they will tell you what they would do, and then you can sort of extrapolate that if they did that, would they do something differently if they had a better solution, yes or no. Like, you can do a lot. But if you ask them, hey, would you do something, could you do something, they're generally going to be nice to you, and people don't actually know what they would do. Like, they're talking about the future, they themselves don't know what they would do in the future.
We've been talking with Ross Haleliuk. Haleliuk. I'm doing my best, Ross. I do want to point out before we kind of wrap here, this is Ross's blog. So Ross himself wrote the book Cyber for Builders, but then he immediately said, if you're only going to buy one book, the mom test is what it is. So I want to make sure to share Ross's blog, since 30% of Cyber for Builders can be consumed from this blog right here. What is venture and security, Ross? What should people know about it?
It's a blog. It used to be a weekly blog. Nowadays I no longer call it a weekly blog. I just call it a blog. Sometimes it's a bi-weekly blog. But yeah, so this is the place where I share some thoughts and perspectives about and learnings about business sides of cybersecurity, about the startup ecosystem, about anything interesting that really comes my way. Sometimes it's very practitioner focused. talking about pen testing and how pen testing is different or not different from QA, from quality assurance. Sometimes it's talking about how, like, what are some of the new trends in the startup ecosystem. It's literally a kitchen sink.
I love it. Well, I dropped a link in chat and pinned it on YouTube comments for people to go check out Ross's blog. I'm sure it's written in your voice, and we've spent the last hour, talking with you and hearing your thoughts on both, entrepreneurial space, investor space, mindsets, and all those things. So I'm sure this blog is going to capture kind of more of that. So if you enjoyed some Ross, I'm telling you, his blog is going to be the place to go. Ross, before we go out of here, is there any like upcoming things that you want people to know about? Any places that they should be connecting with you if they want to like follow your success and your progress?
The only social media where I'm actually active is LinkedIn, and I'm super active on LinkedIn. So please follow, please send a connection request, say hi. Outside of it, my blog is active. I would subscribe. It's free. It can be valuable. Check out the book. Check out Cyber for Builders. Like, obviously, if you are trying to build a company and if you have never ever interviewed people, like, still start with the mom test. But if you've done that, check out Cyber for Builders and what it has to offer as well.
I love it. I'm going to pull up Ross's LinkedIn page just so everybody can see what it looks like. This is it right here. So if you're not sure that you got the right Ross, this is him right here. And you can see all the amazing stuff he's done. And seriously, like when I was doing my research on him, you guys, that intro that I did, and he's like, "Oh, that's the nicest thing I ever said." Like, I had to pack a lunch to get through this entire thing because it was lengthy and well earned and well deserved, Ross. But yeah, I had to pack a lunch, leave breadcrumbs so I could get my way back up to the top of the page, going through all your experiences.
Man, this is very kind of you, and thank you so much for making this conversation happen. Like, it was amazing to reconnect with you in DC, and congrats again on getting recognized.
Oh, thank you. You too. All right, Team SC. Thank you so very much. On behalf of the community, Ross, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation for coming, talking with us, educating us, entertaining us, inspiring us, all the things. Chat, you guys were awesome, super respectful, super great questions coming in. I appreciate it. On behalf of Ross, I'm Jerry. Until next time, y'all, stay secure. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you